For some mutants, fistfights are simply overrated. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. It's me, Amanda. Not all mutants are cut out for joining the X-Men on the battlefield, but that doesn't mean they don't have a lot to offer us. If you could have any mutant offering you support in a fight, who would it be and why? Number 10, Destiny. Truly one of the most useless, I would say at least, in a fight, Destiny is still an extremely powerful mutant. While she might not be able to kick your butt physically, she could easily destroy most of her opponents simply with the knowledge she has of the future, and using it to hurt those who stand in her way and advance her own plots. Destiny is also one of those people who is a masterful and skilled manipulator of scenarios, often choosing to keep secrets in order to make sure her plans go to plan. When Mr. Sinister attempted to eliminate the Quiet Council, or most of them anyways, Destiny proved to be one of his greatest challenges in accomplishing this feat. As soon as Mr. Sinister focused on a direct plan of attack, it actually caused Destiny's powers to trigger, allowing her to sense the future of what he was planning, thereby preventing it from coming to pass by informing others on how to best avert that disaster. When you have a precog like Destiny, she can prove very challenging to get around, especially when she's someone like Mystique protecting and guarding her too, and especially if you happen to try to target her. I think the best course of action if you're going after Destiny is try not to target her. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you also love mutants as much as I do, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9, Dr. Reyes. Dr. Cecilia Reyes is also a mutant, hence why she is one of the lead doctors on the mutant island nation of Krakoa. Although you might forget the fact that she's a mutant when it comes to the Good Doctor, because our focus is usually on her as a medical professional, as opposed to her as, a mutant superhero. When it comes to being a mutant, her powers allow her to summon a bioshield of sorts, a very tight-knit biofield forms around her, and generally also instinctively appears at a whim whenever Cecilia becomes the target of an attack. However, this isn't the power that comes in most handy with Reyes, whose real usefulness does come from her skill as a gifted doctor and surgeon, who is also more familiar with mutant genetics than most doctors would be. Although at one point I do believe Jean Grey actually declared herself an impromptu surgeon as well, speaking of mutants that can be medical people. But Dr. Reyes, I'm pretty sure, is still one of the few mutants who actually has, significant medical training and experience. Unlike Jean just walking in and being like, I'm a surgeon now. It's like, okay, Jean. You got enough going on. Number 8, Shark Girl. Shark Girl isn't particularly useless in my mind, but she also has some setbacks when it comes to her abilities, in the sense that she isn't always in control of them. And I think that we should acknowledge that, so that's why she's here. Shark Girl's mutant powers allow her to turn into a shark, and she doesn't suffer from being on land while in her shark form. She's kind of like, a shark. She's like a shark, a humanoid shark, being able to breathe both on land and underwater, but she is susceptible to the temptation of blood. Ayara can go into a bloodlust, and as a result of this, she'll actually lose control over herself and basically enter into like a bloodthirsty rage. However, that being said, I still feel like she is underappreciated when it comes to what she is capable of. Not only can she seamlessly transition from shore to sea, being just as at home in the depths of the ocean as she is on the land, but Ayara as Shark Girl also gains super strength and super speed, so yeah. Number 7, Curse. Curse is actually one of my favorite new mutants in the comics. I love Curse. Curse is a mutant whose power forces her to curse her enemies, and if she doesn't have any enemies on hand, forces her to curse those around her. She can't keep the curses in, otherwise they basically do damage to her, and while she can control the type of curses that she grants to others or that she casts on others, performing nicer curses also seems to have a physical cost for her. So typically she has to make them kinda nasty in the interests of self-preservation. But also, Curse seems to generally enjoy making other people miserable and causing them harm to an extent, especially if it's people that she doesn't like or just simply doesn't care for. This is what makes her such an interesting and fascinating character to me, but makes her a dangerous character for most heroes to work with. The other thing I love about Curse is that she isn't really a hero, nor is she a villain. I wouldn't say she directly aligns with either side, although I could see her leaning, I guess, a little bit more towards villain if she wanted to. Currently, Curse is lending her talents for better and I guess for worse, to the X-Men Green Team, which is a small mutant team focused on fighting aggressively to save the environment, led by Nature Girl, who recently underwent a secondary mutation after deciding that she basically had enough and decided to let her anger motivate her activism. Number 6. Vanisher. Vanisher is an old school mutant villain who made his first appearance all the way back in the second ever issue of X-Men. Yeah, pretty old character. Well, his power set is actually pretty wild, allowing him to seemingly teleport almost anywhere instantly, with his limitations for bringing others and the distance not yet clearly defined. He also was pretty easily defeated by the X-Men, or more specifically, their mentor, Professor X, the first time around. While admittedly, the young X-Men did struggle against the Vanisher during their first encounter, Professor X easily capacitated and defeated Vanisher by just wiping his memory. A pretty dark way to deal with a tough villain. But I do love how weirdly easy it was for Vanisher to be defeated. Vanisher has since made some appearances in the comics, but now in modern day his powers are even less impressive considering the caliber of teleporter heroes we're now familiar with. Vanisher doesn't really stand a chance against that, despite the fact that his power set is still pretty useful because, I mean, teleporting. Still, I feel like Vanisher versus Magic, I'm gonna put my money on Magic in that one. Number 5. Trinary. Trinary is another favorite of mine, and yet I can understand how some might not see her as the most useful or powerful mutant that we have, given her power set. She is able to communicate with technology and often get technology to work with her and do whatever it is that she needs. Seemingly, this actually isn't because Trinary can bend tech to her will, more that she's just able to communicate with tech and obviously knows exactly what to say to build an alliance, a connection to the technology, thereby encouraging the tech that she speaks with to actually help her with whatever she needs, of, their own volition. She might not be great in a fist fight, but if that fist fight happens to be against a computer, or if there might be a computer nearby who could be compelled to help Trinary in a fight, I mean, she's pretty useful in that regard, so yeah. And I imagine she'd be a star in a show like BattleBots, or she'd simply, just rally the bots and then free them from their human masters, create all kinds of chaos. I could see that being a thing too. Trinary's like, these tech do not want to fight for you, so they're free now. Number 4. Egg. Egg is the epitome of a mutant who is useless, but who actually winds up being also extremely useful. Egg is Fabio Medina. He used to be known by the mutant name of Goldballs, but ended up changing it after he realized that the balls that he was actually able to expel from his body as projectiles were actually infertile eggs. He ended up joining the Five on Krakoa, who are in charge of bringing back any mutants lost by following through with resurrection protocols. While not particularly useful in a fight, as proven by the fact that Egg has been killed multiple times over in the comics just recently, probably suffering the most deaths among the members of the Five, Egg is still a crucial member of this team. Without the eggs that he produces, resurrection would not be possible, hence why he is considered extremely useful. Just maybe not, super useful in a combat scenario. But if you need to be resurrected, Egg is definitely one of the 5 mutants that you should call. Number 3. Cypher. Cypher is of course a mutant who has often been put down as useless, but this was before his mutant glow up. In the last few years in the comics, we've seen a major upgrade to Cypher's power set. Initially, he was just, really good at communicating in the sense of being able to understand all languages, which, is useful, but definitely not anything special when it comes to some of the grand foes that the X-Men are pitted against. I mean, if you can just understand different languages, that's like basically having a translator on hand, so yeah. Over the years though, the meaning of his powers and the interpretation of them has changed and evolved. Eventually, Cypher also learned how to communicate with technology, and even learned how to communicate non-verbally, with fighting also being interpreted as a language that he could master. Although he hasn't recently been as present in the comics prior to Jonathan Hickman leaving his position as head of X, Cypher was probably one of the most important and influential mutants in the comics before that happened, and I would say he still kinda is. Without being in the spotlight as much, Cypher is still super important in terms of the lore and the world building that relates to Krakoa, as he is the only one that can easily communicate with and fully comprehend the sentient mutant island of Krakoa. Just can't really have Krakoa without Cypher. Forge. Forge is kinda a squishy guy, which is why he makes our cut, and not particularly well known for his skills, in a fistfight. But he is well known for making cool stuff, especially cool weapons, and because of that, he is actually extremely useful. Many also forget that Forge has experience with shamanism, and not only has a mutant origin, but an origin that is also attached to the world of magic and mysticism, which honestly is pretty cool. However, for those who want to argue that Forge could march in there alongside Cyclops, I think that I would say Forge actually prefers to outfit other heroes than do that himself. Although he could do so, I guess, if he wanted, Forge is generally best on the sidelines, and I think he knows this, helping his fellow teammates and allies to strategize their way to victory, and helping to outfit his fellow mutants to make sure they survive the battle and are left standing afterwards, no matter how tough or likewise how squishy they might be normally. Number 1. Dazzler. I mean, of course, you know, we're doing a useless list, and even useless but useful, so obviously Dazzler's gonna take my number 1 spot, because she's my number 1 gal. Dazzler is taking our number 1 spot, not because of how useless she seems, but because of how truly useful her powers are, despite the fact that everyone else wants to call her useless. The only thing that really makes her seemingly useless is the fact that Alison Blair actually really prefers to use her powers for her performances as opposed to being, you know, the team leader of the X-Men, which honestly she easily could be. She's been an X-leader of sorts before, but not for the main X-Men team. At least, not as far as I know. Dazzler has powers that have been described before to be potentially unlimited in terms of just how much damage she could do. She can transmute sound into light, and while her light shows in her concerts might seem kinda tame if you're like, yeah, but how you gonna fight with that? She's also used her power set to defeat and defend against heavy hitters like Enchantress and the Hulk. And there's a lot of cool things she can do with that light, okay? Which I would also say means that she is honestly way more useful than people usually give her credit for. Still though, Dazzler prefers to be on the sidelines when it comes to heroics, and leave that to the professional 9-to-5 superheroes. But just remember that in a pinch, she could step in and prove herself to be even more powerful than some of the most famous mutant heroes around. Move over, Wolverine. Move over, Cyclops. It's Dazzler time. So many great mutants that deserve our love, such little time. Thank you for watching, I'll see you in the next video, but until then, you stay nerdy, YouTube. Bye!